The Claiming of Grimmauld Place by bixgirl1. Chapter 3, Part 3. With Curious Promise.
Malfoy and I are snogging.
Ginny blinked several times.
Well, come on then.
She moved her face out of the flue, and Harry took a pinch of powder and headed through it. She was already in her kitchen, and he followed the sound of the water and the tick-tick of the boiling charm start. He came in and sat down, letting his head thunk heavily against the tabletop. A few moments later, Ginny joined him, setting down a mug of tea sitting across from him.
I thought it would happen sooner,
she said finally. Harry lifted his head.
It's been happening forever. Ever since the morning after when you all came over,
Harry said. He lifted the mug and held it in both hands, letting it warm them for a few seconds before taking a tentative sip.
We should do that again,
Ginny said. She gave a wicked little smile, blowing on her own tea.
I had a lot of fun.
Harry gave a dirty look.
Could I talk to Luna instead?
Ginny laughed.
She is in the shower. She'll be down soon. Well, you know, she's only going to offer to clean the wreck spots out of your aura with her crystals.
She took a sip of her tea as well. Then, thoughtfully,
not they yours probably can use it. I don't know. I can't see them the way Luna can. You're both mental. It's no wonder you work so well together.
Harry grumbled, took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes for a minute before replacing them.
We don't agree on everything, you know that, Harry.
Ginny snorted.
I'm perfectly aware that she's a batty as she is darling, and she knows that I think so too. We just like each other. Even when we don't sometimes, we have fun together. She keeps me on my toes and I keep her grounded, and of course, for sex. Stop.
Harry cut in, holding up a hand.
Got we get back to my problem? What makes you think I wasn't talking about that?
She grinned at him, and he looked away, running her words through his head. When he looked back, she gave a little shrug.
And why is it such a problem?
Harry opened his mouth, only to be interrupted by Parkinson breezing in. Her normally sleek bob of raven hair was wavy, as though she'd cast a drying charm on it, but hadn't bothered to style it yet. She was in a short black dress, but was holding her shoes in one hand, preposterous things with a multitude of tiny black straps and incredibly high heels, and had no makeup on.
Really, Jen?
Harry said plaintively. Parkinson stopped. She glared at him for a moment, then rolled her eyes and headed over to Ginny, nudging her chin up with one crooked knuckle.
Next weekend?
She asked. Ginny smiled, eyes sparkling, and she slid them from Parkinson to Harry, then back.
I'll check in with Luna. She may be on shift at the shop all weekend.
Parkinson nodded, then leaned down and kissed her.
Hey,
Harry said, then again, louder, and the kiss went on and on.
Hey!
Ginny finally pulled away with a soft chuckle. Her cheeks had gone rosy beneath her freckles. Her mouth was swollen.
Don't be mean to him, Pansy.
I would have kissed you goodbye regardless of his presence, Parkinson said coolly, straightening. It's not my fault your cowardly ex is showing up at 8 in the bloody morning.
Cowardly?
Harry echoed in disbelief. You've been called a lot of things, but... Parkinson balanced herself with one hand on Ginny's shoulder, lifting each foot in turn to wiggle them into her shoes. She cast Harry a dark look. Indecisive, craven, impersonal and insulting, she suggested. She pat Ginny's hair back a bit, tucking it behind her ears before heading over to the counter and retrieving a bracelet and a long necklace and putting them on. More concerned with his reputation, and he lets on.
Pansy,
Ginny said warningly, frowning. Looked as confused as Harry felt.
What are you talking about? Yeah, Parkinson.
It perhaps wasn't the best comeback, but Harry was momentarily blank for a better response. He wondered if the combination of Ginny and Luna had just managed to attract someone who happened to have a blend of their weirder qualities. Ginny's stubborn refusal to listen to reason when she got angry, Luna's stubborn refusal to believe that reason even existed.
It's Pansy,
she said flatly, enunciating her own name. The bow of her lips drew down into a scowl. "It's polite when you associate socially with someone to call them by their first name." "Fine, pansy." He drew back his chair, staring at her. She crossed her arms over her chest. "It's also polite to respond to invitations." "Invitations?" "Especially when the person issuing them has very good reason not to want you to know where she lives," Pansy added. "I'm not going to kill ye," Harry said, irritated. Then, because he couldn't help himself, mumbled, "Probably." Pansy gave him a disappointingly unimpressed look and raised an eyebrow at Ginny, who smiled. "Isn't that what it is, then? Your birthday isn't for another 8 months. Harry just probably didn't realize that you expected a response right away." "A response out to what?" Harry demanded, finally pushed beyond any semblance of composure. "My birthday party," Pansy said. Her dark lashes fluttered, her arms dropped to her sides. "Draco said I should invite you." "Well, I didn't get the invitation." Irritably, Harry took another gulp of his tea, eyeing her. "Although Ginny's right, I wouldn't have known I was to respond immediately. Who sends out invitations for their birthday 8 months in advance?" "Purebloods do," she snapped, colouring. Harry noticed with satisfaction that her blush wasn't flattering. It spread over her cheeks and throat in dark pink blotches, making her look as though was she in the first stages of spattergroit. "It usually takes that long to plan the party." "Well, fine, I'll come," he snapped back, annoyed and also pleased for some reason he couldn't figure out.
"Of course you'll be there. Hello, Harry. Are you here for breakfast?"
Luna said quietly, drifting and wearing a terry dressing gown. She patted Harry's shoulder, then kissed Ginny on the cheek and went to stand next to Pansy.
"Harry doesn't like parties, but he always shows up when his friends have them. He's also a very thoughtful gift giver."
A mercenary glint appeared in Pansy's eyes.
"It's also a custom to give 3 gifts for a witch on her 22nd birthday," she announced. "One of them with gemstones."
Ginny started laughing.
"It is not." "You don't know all the customs?"
Luna pointed out seriously.
"It may be."
Harry rolled his eyes.
"I came here for a reason."
"Oh?" Luna tilted her head and inspected him, her butter-yellow hair spreading in soft waves over her cheek and down past her shoulder. She stifled a lazy yawn with the back of her hand.
"What reason?"
Trapped by his own tongue, Harry froze. He glanced at Pansy, who was staring at him interestedly, then back at Ginny, who lifted her shoulders, obviously determined to be no help at all. "I'll get you 3 presents and some jewellery for your birthday if you leave, Pansy," Harry said. 5 presents." Pansy looked at him a moment longer, then nodded, huffing a laugh under her breath.
"Oh, I get it. This is about Draco."
She cast a considering look between Harry and Ginny, then slowly added,
"And you're talking to your friends about him."
Harry's cheeks burned.
"It's not," he said,
in pointless denial because she nodded again.
"It's something else." "Merlin, I've been afraid of you,"
she wondered aloud, derisively. Harry glowered at her.
"Bring him to the party."
"Won't he be there?" Pansy waved a hand, rolling her eyes.
"Of course he'll be there. He's helping me plan it, but bring him,"
she said, voice softening a little.
"And ask him if he'll come with you soon, before he finds a better date. Pureblood tradition and all that."
Dropped a kiss against Luna's cheeks and sauntered out, somehow managing not to wobble on the twigs that made up the heels of her shoes. Harry looked from Ginny to Luna as their flue sounded with a loud whoosh. Luna sighed, smiling gently. She sat down at the table and pried Ginny's mug of tea away, taking a sip.
"So, what is it about Draco you need to talk about?"
Her brow knitted.
"Actually, Let me summon my crystals first. You're surrounded by wreck spots. You'll be able to identify the problem more clearly once they're gone.
Harry let his head fall to the table again with a soft groan. Ginny patted his hand. It was almost noon by the time Harry got home, still reeking of the rose oil Luna had insisted on applying behind his ears and to his forehead. But at least she'd finally settled, listening carefully as Harry outlined his frustration with his current dynamic with Malfoy. Unlike Ginny, her face didn't even flicker when he said he was worried his cock might fall off from lack of use. Although she had felt the need to point out that it wasn't lack of use if he was using his own hand. Still, it was worth it just to get it out in a way he never would be able to with Ron, who would never stop laughing long enough to give advice, or Hermione, who would never stop giving advice long enough to listen to him complain. In the end, she'd asked,
"What are you so worried about, Harry? That he doesn't like you? Draco isn't the sort who would kiss someone if he didn't want to, let alone on a regular basis. He said he wants to sleep with you, so he must just like taking things slow until he's more sure of someone."
He didn't exactly seem that sort to Harry, either, but he understood what she was trying to say. As much as he ever understood Luna, at least. As the Floo wards chimed close behind him, Harry glanced around. He was alone in the parlour, but for Frank, who was sleeping half-propped on a giant round pillow that Harry had transfigured from several old cushions he'd found in one of the rooms on the 3rd floor. Malfoy was nowhere to be seen, and the doors to the garden were closed. Curiously, he headed to the kitchen. Harry had been due back 2 hours prior to discuss the decorating, now that the house seemed willing to allow changes, but he'd never received a response to his Patronus. The kitchen was empty too, so he turned to make way for the stairs when he heard a resounding boom from the basement. A moment later, tendrils of pink and blue smoke drifted out from beneath the door. Harry yanked it open and headed down, taking 2 at a time.
"Malfoy?"
Harry coughed, though the smoke felt more like fog sliding into his lung than anything else, cool like damp air. It smelled sweet and smoky, like parchment and ink and mint and flowers and the ocean. He pulled his wand and cast a spell, dissipating it even as it began to clear on its own.
"Draco, are you okay?"
Malfoy stood at a giant counter, glaring at Harry. He patted his hair down. It was streaked with pink and blue powder, was standing out in every direction, and he looked utterly absurd. He had splotches of pink and blue powder on his face as well, and Harry couldn't stop staring. Because Malfoy, Draco, was wearing glasses.
"You wear specs,"
Harry said, incredulity making his voice rise, turning it into a question. Malfoy coughed. He reached up to slip them off, but suddenly Harry was there, having no recollection of moving towards him to steal his hand.
"Don't."
The colour in Malfoy's cheeks deepened under the powder of whatever he'd been brewing. He let his hand fall away. When he spoke, his voice was grainy.
"You're not supposed to come down here." "I saw smoke," Harry said. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. You never responded to my Patronus. I wasn't aware that one needed to respond to a cancellation to shop for and transfigure old furniture,"
Malfoy said stiffly. He caught Harry's eyes and grimaced.
"Stop staring, or I'll take them off, and I can't afford a headache right now." "I can't,"
Harry said, fascinated. Malfoy's glasses were light, silver. They were more slender than Harry's, a fashionable oval, and suited his face perfectly. Looked dignified and bookish in them. Harry swallowed.
"You get headaches."
Malfoy sighed, turned back to the counter and began swishing his wand over it, spelling the diced potion ingredients back into their containers and vanishing the mess.
"Yes," he said curtly. "Is this a problem for you, that I made fun of you once for wearing them?" "Once?" Harry asked, muffling a laugh. "A figurative once upon a time."
Malfoy said, blushing more fiercely. Because if you're going to return the favour, now would be the... Come to Pansy's party with me, Harry said impulsively. Malfoy whipped around to face him, mouth dropping open. Harry shifted, suddenly feeling awkward. If you want. How did you find out about Pansy's party? I wasn't supposed to. It's 8 months away. Right. You might not be here, Harry said, uncomfortable with the reminder. He saw it leaning back against the opposite counter. I mean, well, if you're still here, what do you want to go with me? Or other places, maybe. But definitely the party. I'd like to go with you. I didn't think it was the type of activity you were interested in, Malfoy said. It's not, Harry said honestly. I never know what to do with myself at parties. As witnessed, he added when Malfoy opened his mouth to comment. But I'd, go to them. For my friends. Friends, Malfoy said flatly, nodding. Well, yeah, and Pansy said I could bring a date, so... Harry watched him, taking in the sharp catch of Malfoy's breath, the split second of shock that flitted over his features. I know you're already going, so if you think it's stump. She's invited Ginevra and Luna and the other 2/3 of your famous little club, he said with a small sneer. Harry nodded back slowly. So, they know about us? He held his breath, and it seemed Malfoy did too. Malfoy's eyes were like shadowed glass, reflecting the light from the lamps around them, faceted and huge behind his spectacle. Since when? Since the day we first kissed for Ron, Harry said. Probably the same day for Hermione. Ginny and Luna today, though neither of them seemed surprised. Then again, nothing surprises Luna. He frowned. I didn't mean it literally when I said Ron knows nothing. Malfoy stared at him for a long moment, then abruptly flicked his wand over a potion bubbling merrily in a cauldron behind him. It stilled. He caught Harry's wrist in his hand and made for the stairs. Where are we going? Harry asked when they reached the kitchen. Malfoy turned and headed towards the hallway, beginning up the next set of stairs. My room. Harry tripped slightly, then righted himself. Why? Yours is awful, Malfoy said. I have nice floors. And we can check on your floor sometime, Malfoy said, terse as he continued to drag Harry behind him. But I prefer bed, or at least a sofa, or some sort of surface that won't kill our knees. Shag? Harry tripped again, his cock stiffening hopefully. Now? Call me Draco, Malfoy ordered. I liked when you did that. Yeah, sure, Draco, Harry said as confused as he was turned on. Draco. They reached the landing of the second floor, and Malfoy, Draco, turned suddenly, pushed Harry to the wall, and kissed him, hard and unrelenting, his tongue sliding into Harry's mouth, the tip of his nose pressed against Harry's cheek. Their glasses connected with a small clicking sound as Draco slanted his head further. Harry's hand came up to rest on Draco's hips, which rotated against his. Draco was already hard, his cock a thick press against Harry's groin as he moved. Draco! Harry gasped when he pulled away. He had one thumb on Harry's waist, almost as if to keep him in place, and he fisted the other in Harry's hair, tilted his head to the side to expose his throat. He ducked his head to bury his face against it, biting down over the cords of it roughly before sucking gentler at abused skin. Harry's brain caught up with the events, and he curled a leg around the back of Draco's slightly bent knee, urging him to come closer. Fuck, yes. Yes. Draco agreed in a mumble, still mouthing roughly at Harry's throat. You'll fuck me. Yeah. Harry leaned his head farther to the side, swamped with sensation as Draco followed the line of his throat up to just under his jaw. He scraped his teeth, fingers digging into Harry's waist. Oh, you want me to? I assume that's okay.
Draco chuckled, breath warm against Harry's skin. Harry shivered. He clasped Draco's arms with both hands and pulled him flush. Draco obliged, thrusting hard against Harry for a few delicious moments.
It's okay, yes?
Harry said, screwing his eyes shut. He released Draco's arms and tangled his hands in his hair. It was as soft as it looked, the strands silky against his palms. He drew Draco close for another kiss, his foot coming down so he could spin them and take his turn pushing Draco into the wall. Draco shuddered. He made an approving noise into Harry's mouth.
"You'll keep your glasses on,"
Harry said.
"Bloody Philistine,"
Draco muttered. Harry pulled away, panting, and Draco grinned at him ferally.
"You keep yours on too."
Their eyes locked for a moment, then, in unison, they turned, heading towards Draco's room. Harry felt blurry, urgent with need, his palm damp and hot in Draco's grip as Draco pulled him. He was so focused on the feel of it that he slammed into Draco's back when he pulled to an abrupt halt 2 feet from his bedroom.
"What?"
Draco stood stock still. He twitched his hand in Harry's, a silent prompt. Harry looked up. At the end of the hallway, to the side of the staircase leading up, there was a brand new door. To be continued. Thank you for listening to this part of The Claiming of Grimmauld Place by bixgirl1. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.